Nichelle Nichols is here. Good morning to Nichelle Nichols.
Good morning, Bruce.
Oh.
Good morning, Eileen.
Good
it's nice to be
morning.
here.
It's great to have you here.
Yes, it is.
Looking-
Pretty as a picture.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Looking fabulous, fit, and put together for 7 o'clock in the morning.
It wasn't easy.
And flew in from Los Angeles, so this is going to be a cold day for you in Indy today.
but I'm used to this kind of weather. I grew up in Chicago.
Oh, Chicago.
Oh, boy.
Chicago.
yeah.
You need to wear a coat 32 degrees.
God, yeah.
Where can you go when you don't want to be Uhura, when you don't want to sign autographs, when you don't want to talk about Star Trek? What do you do?
I tell you what you don't do. You don't go on a Star Trek cruise.
Oh, really?
Or any kind of cruise. And it stopped me in my tracks, but I go past my gate and go to my home, and I go and I garden.
Huh.
And nobody knows it but me.
Nobody but you. That's your little paradise.
Yes, that's my refuge.
Yeah.
I write and I garden.
We mentioned you grew up in Chicago. Originally, you wanted to be a dancer. That was your first one.
I always wanted to be what I'm doing. I wanted to be in this business of entertainment. And so I started out as studying ballet, and I became very proficient in that until the point that I had to make the decision on whether I was going to be a ballerina or the other things that interested me. And I discovered quite fortuitously that I love to sing, and I love to dance, and I love to write, and I love to act, and all of those things. And so one discipline wasn't enough for me.
At one point, you were working with Duke Ellington, for example.
Well, I was doing a big show in Chicago at the Sherman House. We were doing the history of the College Inn story, and at the Sherman Hotel. And many of the great artists at that time came through and stayed at the Sherman House, and one was no less than Duke Ellington. He came down to see the show and asked to meet me. And I was with the troupe. We were portraying the Catherine Dunham dancers, and we were singing in the opening and the closing and in between, And he asked to see me, and I was only 14, so my mother or father had to be with me at all times. And so she said, well, not unless the rest of the company can come down and meet Mr. Ellington, too.
Yes.
So I pouted for a few minutes and went down to see him. And he said, you're going to be a singer, because I could hear that voice of yours over everybody on the stage.
Duke Ellington?
Wow.
Yes, but a couple of years later, he came back through. He had remembered me, and he had created a new suite of music, and he wanted me to choreograph and perform to the suite of music, which I did. I was almost 17, and I traveled with him. And just a few days before the end of the engagement, the band singer got sick, and he knew that I used to stand in the wings and watch her and mouth everything she was doing. I knew all of her songs, and we sang in the same key. And I went on and finished the engagement as a singer. And he was very, very happy with it, and I was nervous. I think that was the last time I was ever nervous.
Really?
Yeah, after that, I thought,
That was the big
you
shot.
can go anywhere. You can do anything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Somewhere in this period, as a teenager, as a young woman, you changed your name from Grace to Nichelle.
Well, my mother changed my name. I went to my mother and I said, Mom, I love the name Grace because I was named after my aunt from Spain, on my father's side, Graciela.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that was gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
But in English, it's Grace. And that was very beautiful. But people called me Gracie. And I couldn't stop them from calling me Gracie.
Oh.
So I went to my mother when I was just coming out of that show. And I said, I don't want to be called Gracie. And no one called me Gracie at home. So it wasn't a bother to me until I went to school. And so I said, rename me. She said, well, I originally wanted to name you Michelle, but your father wouldn't have it. So he wanted it named after his aunt. And so she said, And the other thing is, you should have a name that had like Marilyn Monroe, M. And she said, she says, so I can't change your last name to Michelle Michaels or Mickles. And she's laughing and making jokes. And she said, so what about Nichelle? And I loved it. So she said,
perfect.
I said, Nichelle Nichols. I love it. Yes.
I've never heard of another Nichelle with an N.
either.
Are there others?
There are now. I have several. I was the first, but I have several namesakes.
Named after you?
Yes, yes.
Well, that's flattering.
And I have, and people, because of the Nichelle, suddenly changed my last name from Nichols to Nicole. So it's Nichelle Nicole.
Oh.
So, but I'm
I
Nichelle
like that
Nichols.
too. Oh, yeah.
But I have twin nieces, and they honored me by naming them Nichelle and Nicole.
First film was Porgy and Bess. Who were some of the
my
stars of
goodness.
that film?
You really have done your homework,
well-
haven't you? Yes. When I first came out to Los Angeles, they were doing Porgy and Bess. And I had been singing all over Canada and down the Pacific Northwest. And my parents had moved to Los Angeles, and I wanted to come down and do some serious acting now. But when I came down, I needed something to do, so they were auditioning for it. I went out for the dancers, and I got it. And then my agent called me and says, you have a call for Porgy and Bess for the singers. This is another agent, right? And so I went out and I got it. So I was actually hired both as a dancer and a singer, with the singers, who were hired separately. And so that was a lot of fun, and it earned me my right to join SAG as an actor.
You met a lot of big Hollywood names
Oh, my
at that
goodness.
time.
Sammy Davis Jr.
Oh, I love him.
Well,
There was Sidney Poitier, Dorothy Dandridge, and Pearlie Mae. She was great.
didn't you start dating Sammy Davis Jr.?
I did. He was so wonderful because he'd come over and watch me dance, and he kept approaching me and saying, and so we danced together. And Hermes Penn, the choreographer, liked us so much. He went and whispered in Otto Preminger's, the director's ear, and so we were doing the dance number. And the next thing I know, they gave me a dance with Sammy Davis Jr.
Oh, fun! Now we're kind of at the point where you get the script for Star Trek. When you get that script, what did you think when you first read it?
I never got the script for Star Trek.
You never read the script?
How did you get this job then?
How'd you get it?
I didn't even know Star Trek existed.
Oh, my gosh!
I was in Europe.
Yeah.
Performing, and I had just arrived in Paris from England, where I had been for a month performing, singing, and was going to stay in Paris for a couple of weeks before I went to my next trip, before I opened in Paris. And I got a call from my agent saying, come home, they're doing Star Trek. And I didn't answer him. I thought, come home to, do an interview that I probably won't get anyway. Is he crazy?
Yeah.
And then he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. He sent me a first-class round-trip ticket.
Oh, I go just for the
However,
ride.
there was a caveat. He said, if you get the part, he says, if you don't get the part, you could be back in Europe. If you do get the part, I want my cotton-picking money back. So I went in for the interview, and there sat Gene Roddenberry, who had given me my first acting role, guest star role in his series The Lieutenant 3 years before Star Trek.
Oh.
And I was so delighted to see him, And then I realized this was the show he had been telling me about when we'd become friends after the Lieutenant. And this was the show he was talking about, but he didn't call it Star Trek. He had called it Wagon Train to the Stars. And so the role of Uhura was not written at all. I read for the part of Spock.
Just to give you something to read. They had already
Just to
cast.
give me something, because the show had already been bought, the pilot, and they were getting ready just days before they were going to start, and he wanted a woman on the command crew bridge and part of the command crew. I didn't even know I was fourth in line in command for when I got it. And so I read for Spock, and when I finished, Bob Justman, the associate producer, said, tongue-in-cheek, have Penny call down to personnel and see if Leonard Nimoy has signed his contract yet.
You were almost Spock. You could have been Spock.
Not even close.
All right. NBC, the network, however, had a problem with you being on the show. Why?
I think that they weren't ready for the integrated cast. They had bent over backwards to have George Takei on the command crew, and and Gene had insisted, so they were going to have an integrated extras as the crew that you would see in the background. But as far as the leads were concerned, they had what they were going to have, and they had an African-American man as the communications officer, but he hadn't said anything in the pilot, except, I think, yes, sir. So he was glad to get out because he wouldn't start in room 222. So when I came in, it added a whole new dimension to it. And Gene had said he was going to make a little change on the bridge, and they thought they meant costume color. He said, I'm going to add a little color to the bridge. And they were really upset about that. And so he forced the issue and really fought for it. And I didn't even know of the situation for a long time.
However, they continued to cut back your role.
Yeah. The writers were so excited with the makeup of the crew, of the bridge crew, and that they really wrote wonderful scripts. And then I'd get the pink pages, and I'd get the yellow pages. These are the rewrites, and the orange pages, and the orchid pages, and it'd be just whole scenes would be cut, and I knew when scenes were cut, I was prominent in it.
And these
because the network had the power of first refusal on the scripts.
So the network didn't want you to have a bigger part than you had.
Well, they hadn't expected me to be on. They didn't want me on the show to begin with. And when the show finally came on, the networks were the first, and the show was so popular. I was getting as much fan mail as Bill and Leonard, and only I didn't know it. They didn't give me my fan mail at first.
But they had to know.
Isn't it hard?
They knew.
Isn't that just shocking in 2003 to think that
went on?
Really
but that was
went
1978. Yeah, it's 1966.
Wow.
Yes.
At one point, you almost quit that show, started to quit, and somebody talked you out of it. And who was that person who talked you out of quitting?
Dr. Martin Luther King. I had decided to leave the show, but oddly enough, it wasn't because, that my role was being cut back. It was because I missed musical theater. I had never planned to be in movies or television. Live theater was everything to me. And so after the first of the year, I thought, well, it's not that important that I be on this show. So I was going back to my first true love, live action.
Sure.
And I missed singing, and I missed dancing, and I missed acting in the theater. And so I told Gene Roddenberry I was going to leave after the first show, and he was devastated. He said, "You can't do that. Don't you understand what I'm trying to achieve here?" And so it was on a Friday that I told him. He told me take the weekend and think about it. And on Saturday, I went to an NAACP fundraiser, and someone said to me, "There's a big fan of yours here, the promoters of the set." And so I turned around, and there was Dr. Martin Luther King. He said, "Yes, I'm the fan."
What'd you say?
I couldn't say anything.
No, I'll bet.
For the first time in my life, I was at a loss for words. And then he told me when I thanked him for his praise, he said it was one of the only shows that he and his wife Coretta would allow their little children to stay up late and watch. And later years, his children would grow up and seek me out and tell me, Dr. King, I just can't believe I'm meeting you. One of my favorite actors. When we were children, that was one of the only shows. And I said that your mother and father would let you stay up and watch. And they went, oh, that's right, you met my dad. He said he came home so excited. Guess who I met?
Oh, my gosh.
I'm trying to picture him sitting there in the house watching Star Trek on TV.
Yes.
That's an image that
he said it was one of the most important shows on television because for the first time, the world was going to see us, our people, as we should be seen. As not only beautiful people, but intelligent and qualified.
And leaders.
And there was nothing on TV for our little children to see. And there was nothing on TV for other people's, like your little children, to see us as we are.
Sure.
And everything that was ever on television was comedy and slapstick and step and fetch it, that did not represent the black community at all.
Right.
And still doesn't, and a comedy that's on TV still doesn't represent us, but at least it's of a better quality now. But at that time, we had nothing. There was no Sidney Poitier doing, for us. There was no one outside of one or two people that had anything to do with dignity.
And that meeting with Martin Luther King changed your mind, made you stay on that show?
It changed my life. Because when I went back to tell Gene Roddenberry what Dr. King said, this 6'3" Gene Roddenberry, strong man, sat there behind his desk, and this big fat tear came down his cheek. And he said, God bless that man. At least someone knows what I'm trying to achieve.
Nichelle Nichols on Throwback Thursday. Lots more coming up. Time, 8:24. Let's talk about some of the cast members you worked with on Star Trek. There's been a lot of
Captain
talk.
Bruce.
Thank you. Oh, I like that. Let's talk about William Shatner. A lot has been said and written about William Shatner. Tell me something good. Tell me what you like about William Shatner.
I think he's very charming. He can be immensely amusing. I think he's a fine actor. I don't think anyone could have played Captain Kirk as well as he. He's has a warped sense of humor.
Oh, is that right?
That he enjoys. He laughs all the way through his jokes, and you have to laugh at him
because he's laughing so hard.
Because he's laughing so hard. Even when Bill. It's not funny, Bill.
You also
he was absolutely hysterical with the first interracial kiss. It was because of him that it went on the air. Because there was concern this was the first interracial kiss, and I didn't realize that. So when I read the script, I said, "Oh, good, we have a great little scene there going, and very well if they don't cut it." And then, sure enough, they didn't cut it. And right up until the time we were doing it, I thought they were going to cut it. I mean, I thought they were going to cut the lines. I wasn't thinking they were going to cut the kiss, but. The suits came down and everybody worked, I had angst over whether to keep it in or have the kiss. And Bill Shatner was absolutely definite that we were going to have that kiss. And so finally Gene said, well, let's do it two ways, shoot it two ways. And so Bill kept doing the first one, the first kiss. Finally, the director said, well, got to get the non-kiss. He says, oh, sure. Well, why didn't you say something? I mean, And then we only had time to do one last scene without the kiss. And when we looked in dailies the next day, what the director hadn't seen was Bill leaned me over into the camera, and when he held me there, he looked up into the camera and crossed his eyes. And they couldn't use the one without the kiss.
He blew that shot to make sure that they were going to use a scene with you.
That's
kissing.
right. And there was just dead silence in the room, and finally the five suits stood up and laughed like crazy.
Oh my gosh!
And this I said to give credit to the network NBC, because they sort of said, leave the kiss in, the hell with anybody who doesn't like it.
And nobody really cared, did they?
Yes. Well, it really was a big deal at
Yeah?
that time. But we got more fan mail from that show than we'd received from that scene than we'd received from before or since in the show. They loved it.
So William Shatner, good kisser?
Yeah. Well, let's just say, put it this way, he insisted on 36 takes to get it right, and I didn't complain.
You wrote that Leonard Nimoy, despite the title of his book, I Am Not Spock, is a little like Spock in some ways. How?
I think Leonard is very much like Spock.
Yes?
Yeah. Although he has a wonderful sense of humor and is a wonderfully warm human being, he has that innate reserve and calm to himself with himself, and so very much Spock, and the logical aspect of Spock. Not only that, he is infuriating that you can never break him up.
Really?
Never.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No. Off stage, yes, he'll laugh at a joke, but you try to break him up, even when we're just waiting for the cameras, never can you break him up.
Wow,
That's
character,
infuriating.
yeah.
And Forrest Kelly, you called him D. Cass called him D.
Yes.
On screen, he's a grumpy old doctor.
Oh, he's the sweetest.
But in
guy
real
the
life,
world.
really?
The sweetest man in the world. He is the epitome of the Southern gentleman.
Yeah.
Yes, and a loving and a very loyal. If he's a friend of yours, he's a friend for life. I adore that man.
You wrote that George Takei or Takai, I've never been sure how
Takei.
Takei he pronounces his last name. That you wrote that you did an impersonation of him laughing.
Oh no, Nichelle, don't stop, Nichelle, please.
So what so he would break out in laughter.
That's
from
his
time-
laughter, He just can't stand it in his
man.
throat,
Man.
So one day he was laughing, his laughter is startling if you've never heard it before.
Oh, yeah.
And so, because it really is loud, and the funnier something is to him, the louder it gets until he almost convulses. And so one day Walter could just get his good all the time. He was the big jokester.
Okay.
And he and Bill, between Bill and Walter did something and had him laughing, and George started laughing because he had taken him, and George had done something, and George fell for it. But he's the first one to laugh at himself, George.
Yeah.
So he started laughing, and I started laughing, and he turned to me and laughed, Nichelle, imagine that. And I started laughing just like him. And his eyes bulged. And he started laughing louder. And I started laughing louder. And whatever he would say, I would say. And until tears were coming down his face. Please stop.
Wow, it sounds like
man.
it was a fun set.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a terrific set to work on. It was a craziest set in the world to work on.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of that, the props, costumes, scripts, that stuff is now worth lots of money to
Yes.
collectors. Did you save any of that stuff?
I have lots of memorabilia. As a matter of fact, you were mentioning eBay, Jeff, and I have been asked to part with some of my stuff on eBay, and I think I give a lot to stuff to charity, and I thought I might do that, but I'm not. I don't know if I can part with some things.
Well,
and I
yeah.
have some precious things that I adore, like they're trying to talk me out of my earpiece.
Oh, that's the. all right.
I don't think I'm going to part with that.
I wouldn't
I
either.
don't know if I can
No.
part with that.
How about the original costume? I don't know if you call it. Is it a uniform or is it costume?
Uniform
Uniform. Very
costume.
good. Okay. the first series with the short.
Yes.
You still have any of those?
Foolishly, I did not see any reason at that time
To keep them?
to keep my costume. So you could see how much foresight I have.
Well, I don't think when the series went off the air, nobody knew that
That's
it was
right.
going to
Who
come
knew?
back and be a big movie series
Yes,
and
yes.
do what it did.
Huge success.
After Star Trek, you got involved in something that was really cool. You headed a recruiting drive for NASA for new astronauts. Who were some of the astronauts who responded to that call?
Well, when I was asked to come and assist them in recruitment, I took a contract from them under my company, Women in Motion, and I took a year off of my career to identify and personally recruit the most qualified people of women and minorities for the specifically for the Space Shuttle program. So I was very, very proud, and 4 years later, I was awarded one of NASA's highest civil service awards.
Wow.
However, among those who were selected at that time were names like Ron McNair and Ellison Onizuka and Judy Resnick.
Judy Resnick. They were unfortunately 3 of my recruits who were in the first Challenger disaster, which my heart pained very deeply. It was Judy Resnick who had pinned me with my award.
Oh my gosh.
So it was the last time I got to see her.
About that disaster, you wrote, of course, given the nature of space exploration, the odds are that, yes, one day there may be another disaster. You wrote that about 9 years ago, and then...
I was in Houston when that happened.
And you were correct about it,
I was correct about it.
Wow.
And when I returned to L.A., I didn't realize how heavily that affected me, and I wound up in the hospital for observation. They thought I had a heart attack. It was indigestion.
What?
But still,
But it was no,
yes.
it really was stress and stress from that. It was so painful.
Oh.
Yeah, I was on there for a day, but it was kind of frightening. It was it was so it hit me.
Yeah.
I take it so very, very personal because I'm so very supportive of our space program and how valuable it is to humankind. And I hear all of these things about why are we spending all of that money in space, and the fact of the matter is we spend that on Earth.
That's right.
To go into space, yes.
You have a son, Kyle? Where is
Kyle
he?
Johnson lives in New Mexico. He manages one of the top radio stations, television stations, public service television, and he left a job as a music engineer in Albuquerque in the top recording studios.
Wow.
He's married there and happy, and I'm really very proud of him.
You've written 2 novels, science fiction novels.
Yes, The Adventures of Saturna. First one was Saturn's Child, and that spawned Saturna's Quest, and now I have to write the third one.
These are not in the Star Trek universe. These are...
No, I set these only when I started writing the first one. Starts out 75 years from today, and it goes about the next 30 years into the next century, yeah.
So you're writing another one?
Yes, I'm writing another one, and I'm writing a book on beauty, health, and sensuality.
Oh.
Well, I need to get there.
And still singing.
And I'm still singing, I'm still acting, I'm still having a great time with my life, and I'm traveling all over the world, and I get to see all the Star Trek fans when I'm able to do a Star Trek convention.
How about these fans? What's your real...
God bless them. Star Trek fandom comes from every walk of life, and that's what people who don't know don't understand, because a lot of times they wear the costumes from the show in celebration of it, but it started out as a Star Trek costume contest, and then when those kind of petered out, they continued to wear them, and it's just people like you and me, as doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, and everybody in between who are Star Trek fans. And you're talking about people with higher IQs than most people, who are the avid fans, and they just come to celebrate. They're not weird.
Some of them you've got to admit,
they're not
are
weird.
over the top.
But they'd be weird. But those people would be weird if there was never a Star Trek. The weird ones add a little spice to it.
I suppose. All right.
Hey,
Yeah, that's when you hit the mother load.
Right, and with Gene Roddenberry's edict, infinite diversity and infinite combinations, everybody's included.
Oh, I love it.
All
yeah.
right. Well, let's meet all the fans tonight.
I'll be looking forward to that. So listen, you guys out there, y'all come, you hear? Because all my hailing frequencies will be open for you, and I'll be looking forward to signing autographs. And meeting you.
Great.
Nichelle Nichols on Throwback Thursday.